Hello again, everybody. This is Steve Duffy coming to you from Robert Ferguson Observatory with a second tutorial on PixInsight. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to stretch images. There are multiple ways to do it, and we'll demonstrate them all and show you what the results are and how to achieve the best possible outcome. So for this, we're going to start with a colored image. It best illustrates the differences, I think. So here I have an RGB image that is currently unstretched. I can show you what it looks like with the screen stretch. It is color. It's been color neutralized, color balanced, but it's not very saturated, as you can see. And so we'll remove the screen stretch and we'll try several different techniques on it. So first we have to clone the image. So we do that by making copies, dragging the tab away. And I'm going to rename these. So we'll name this one RGB3 curves. And we'll rename this one Histogram stretch. And we'll rename this one masked stretch. And we'll rename this one A sin H. Okay, cascade those windows. So let's start with curves. This is the traditional method used in Photoshop and a lot of other programs. We open the curves transformation. You can get this from the process menu. We select RGB and we'll turn on the preview so we can follow what's happening. So now in the curves transformation, well, in most images anyway, the information that we're most concerned with is here in this first quadrant, the first level of brightnesses. All of the rest of this curve is really stars. It's the very brightest things in the image. So what we do is we make a curve that rises steeply at first so that we brighten all of the things in this lower quadrant a lot. But now you notice the curve has gone up off the screen. That means that everything above this is clipped. We don't want to oversaturate all the stars either, so we have to drag this back down until we get it back on screen. And in fact, we want to drag the upper end down a little just to keep things from being completely saturated. And I'll pull this down a bit and kind of adjust. The idea being to get a curve that is monotonic. By monotonic we mean it's always changing the same direction. There's no dips. You know, I think I'm going to remove this point. No, that didn't work. I got to put it back. Move this one up a bit. Okay, that should be a pretty good curve. So let's apply it and see what happens. And we see that the image brightened. Now this is the preview. So what we're going to see is that that's what happens after the second application, actually. So we'll do a second application. And this shows us the third application, which looks safe. So we'll do that again. Now if we do a fourth application, it's going to be over brightened. I'll close the preview. You can see that this is where we're at now. Everything is pretty bright. I'm still not seeing the halos very well. But if I apply this curve again, it's not going to work. So turn the preview back on. And we'll play with this a little bit. Let's say there, and then I'll pull this down a little to darken the background. And that's a pretty good result. So we apply that, close the preview, and there we have our result from curves. I'm going to put this aside for a moment while we do the others. Park it over here. Now we'll try the histogram transformation. And once again, we'll turn on the preview. We'll select the active image so that we can see the curves. We'll start by pulling the mid-tone slider to the left. Not too radical. You can see that the image has brightened a little, but not enough to really show us much. Let's apply it. We see that the histogram has moved over. We see that the image will be brighter if we apply a second pass. So we do. Looks like a third pass might be a little too bright. So I'm going to tone that down a little bit. Something like that. What I'm looking at is this histogram curve up here. I want to be just past this first quadrant. So somewhere in the middle of the second quadrant looks pretty good. And I will apply that. Now I'll reset this to default settings. And you see that it brightened up the image pretty well, but the sky is too bright. So we have an additional tool here that we can use to darken the background. So we use the black slider and move it over. And while we move, we watch this number here. We don't want to clip very many pixels. You're going to clip a few. So I usually stop this when I get to just a few hundred. So you watch here as we get close to the edge. So somewhere about there, we've clipped a couple hundred pixels. They won't be noticeable in the image, but you see that the background has darkened considerably. We apply that, close the preview, and there's our result from histogram stretch. So once again, we'll park this, minimize that, park this on the side, and we'll try our next technique, which is the masked stretch. And so the way that the mask stretch works is it's trying for a target background level. I think this background is a little too high. I'm going to go for 0.11. And what it does is it stretches just a little bit. Then it applies a mask to the whole image, all the bright spots, so that they don't get overstretched. Then it stretches again, applies a mask again over the bright spots, stretches again, and it does that for 100 iterations. So the net effect is that the bright stuff doesn't get brightened very much, the dim stuff gets brightened normally, and so we'll see what the effect of that is. Now we don't have a preview here, so we just have to run it and see what happens. So there we have a mask stretch. We have a nice dark background. We have a reasonably stretched image in the center. I'm going to put that aside for the moment. Park it over here. And we'll go to the next technique, which is the hyperbolic sine stretch. And this is It's similar to histogram stretch, except that it is using a built-in hyperbolic arcsine curve to minimize the stretch of the highlights while stretching the dim stuff. Now there's a setting here called black point, which you can use, and you can use the real-time preview. I do not like to use the black point because I find that it clips too much, so I just leave it set at 0. Stretch factor for a normal, if you were just going to use this, I would say a normal image is about 500. So somewhere in there, we apply that. We look at the result, and now we'll open these others back up and compare them. So put that back. I lost that one there. Okay. So first I'm going to open curves, then histogram stretch, then masked, then arcsine, and then we're going to ask it to tile these windows. And now I'm going to zoom way in. Let's try this zoom. Not enough. Let's try that zoom. That is pretty good. Still maybe a little too much. Let's go back down one. Yeah, okay. So now there's a good way to make all of these look the same, which is you take this tab and drop it right on top of the other tab, and it'll match the position and zoom. I can drop that on there, drop that on there, drop this on here. We see that we've matched the position and zoom. So let's go look at our first one. So this is our one that we did with curves. And we see that it's a nice bright image, but it's far from perfect. For one thing, the core of the galaxy is all blown out. The color saturation is low everywhere. The stars are kind of big and bloated, and they have pretty hard edges. So there are things you can do with curves, taking a lot of small, careful steps to try to accentuate different parts of the image, but it's a little bit tedious. You can do better than I've done here, but I don't think it's the best possible tool to use. Here we have the histogram stretch, which is kind of the conventional approach in PixInsight. It's the thing that most people use. You can see we've got a little better control of the sky background. The stars are a little more compact. Similar sort of saturation, color saturation. The core of the galaxy is not so blown out, so that's good. We have a little more detail there. But in both of these techniques, the background noise has been blown up or stretched as well, and it's pretty evident. So now let's go to the third technique, which is the masked stretch. And we see that, well, the stars are considerably smaller. The core is not blown out at all. Saturation is better. We see some more blue in here. And we see a nice black background. But the problem is that the galaxy is really flat. You don't see the brightness gradations really at all. So that's going to take some special treatment to try to bring that back. And here we see the arcsine stretch, which is sort of similar to the mass stretch. However, it's got even better color saturation. not quite as dark a background, so some of the noise got stretched as well. The galaxy is kind of flat. However, we can see the arms pretty well in this one that we could not see so well in this one. So we've got some of the benefits. It's kind of a cross between masked and histogram stretch. So which of these do you choose, and how do you choose it, and how do you use it? Well, the reality is that probably what you're going to want to do is use a combination of methods so that you get some of the color saturation without having quite such a flat image. So for this example, I'm going to use the arc sign method. So shrink all these back down. And we'll take this one back, undo what we did, put it back to normal size. Now we're going to take the arcsign H method again, but this time instead of stretching it by 500 times, we're going to stretch it maybe 200 times. Something like that. And apply it. And you see that we've got a black sky, a dim galaxy. We don't see the arms much. So it needs a little more help. And for that help, we're going to call on the histogram transformation. So now select this image, select it there, and you see that this tells us that our histogram is not far enough to the right. In other words, this image is not bright enough yet, so we need to brighten it some more. Let's turn on the preview. Let's blow the preview up so we can see what's happening. Let's try brightening it just a bit, not too much. And you see that it is looking a little brighter. So let's apply that and see what would happen after a second application. Well, so our histogram is over here where we like it, but the sky doesn't look so great. But we can fix that, reset that, and use the same technique we did before to darken the sky a little bit more without clipping too many pixels here. So we apply that. And now we can afford to go a little brighter again. So reset, brighten. If we brighten too much, the galaxy starts to look a little noisy, so somewhere in that range. And another round of darkening of the sky. Somewhere around that range. Now, this sky may look good to you because it's black, but you see that we're over here clipping quite a lot of pixels, and it won't look good in the final transformation. So we don't want to make it that dark. We might go just I'm not going to go anymore. I think this is dark enough the way it is. Okay, so close the preview. Expand this up. And look at what we've got. So we've got stars that have pretty good natural looking color saturation, natural looking shapes and brightness profiles, no real hard edges in them. The galaxy has a pretty good brightness graduation. The core is clearly brighter, and yet it's not completely blown out. Now we do have some noise that we need to worry about. So we'll do a couple of little things here to kind of improve this image a bit. So the first thing I want to do is, if you look closely at this image, I'll zoom way in, and you can see that a lot of these pixels are green. So we don't like green, generally speaking, in our astronomical images. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove that. So I'm going to get the SCNR function. Color to remove is green. I'm going to use average neutral and just apply it to the whole image. And there it's brought me back to a nice neutral sort of looking image. And if I go back to this zoom level, you see that it does look better. Okay? Now the next thing I need to do is treat the noise. But as we talked about before, we only want to treat the noise in the background, not so much in the galaxy. So we need to make a mask. So we extract the luminance. We take that luminance and we brighten it, and for that we'll use the histogram transformation. Make sure that we're looking at the right histogram. And I'm going to say, turn on the preview so I can see what I'm doing. Slide the white slider over until most of the galaxy is white. Not entirely white, because there is some noise out in the halo that we want to correct. So mostly I'm concerned with the really bright portions of the galaxy. So call it there. Now the sky is too bright, so I need to darken the sky back to black. And so somewhere right there where we have a little bit of mask on the halo, but not too much. The center part of the galaxy is well masked. We'll call that good. Apply that. Close the preview, and there is our mask. Now we apply the mask to the image. You can't apply the mask because there's already a mask present. It's just not active. If I enable, you'll see it there. So delete that mask. Now apply this mask. And let's have a look at this mask. So as we see, the red is the protected area. So we're protecting the wrong thing, so we need to invert the mask. Now we have the right protection layer. Don't need to show the mask. Expand this once again. Now pull out our multi-scale linear transform. This is currently set to sharpen. I want to reset it to noise reduction. So noise reduction, you recall, 3 iterations, 3 standard deviations, and the full amount on the 1 pixel layer. 2 pixel layer, just keep going down by thirds. The 4 pixel layer, again down by a third, and a third, and a third. Okay, so that should be good. Let's apply it and see what happens. Now, we got good noise reduction in the background and in the halo. Let's take a close look at what happened in our galaxy. Make sure that we didn't overdo. So if I undo and redo, the stars and the galaxy all look pretty good. I'm going to say that that is good. The noise reduction worked. So park that. Go back to normal size. And I think that is sufficient for your color image if you're going to use it for an LRGB combination, which is what we will do next. So see you next time.